a lot of people tend to overthink their first idea, and it's really hard. And I think that probably a lot of people get turned off from entrepreneurship by starting something that's a little too complex, and they can't pull it off.
Welcome to CryptoBiz, the crypto business podcast. Keith Allen and Brad Nickel from Black Knox, getting ready to break things down. It's been a while since we've put a fresh episode together, Brad. So always glad to be back in the saddle doing this.
About time we took the time.
No question about it. Quite honestly, a lot has evolved in the industry since our last episode. And if you're new to the Crypto Business Podcast, we welcome you and we invite you to check out our earlier episodes. The news stories in the beginning of them may be a little bit dated, but it's still relevant to the crypto industry. And there's most definitely some great info on a range of topics, from launch planning and white papers to tokenomics, planning successful fundraising events. Be sure and check them out. Moving forward, we've decided to eliminate the news so that we can get to the main focus of the show more quickly. A couple other changes. We now have video versions of the show, so you can watch on YouTube or on our website at cryptobiz.services, where you'll find the entire CryptoBiz University series of podcasts, including our newest one, the Black Knox Master Marketing Series. And Brad, I'm excited, and I know you are too, that we're now going to have guests.
Yep. Going to bring in folks that have expertise, that are starting new businesses, that are trying to get things going in the crypto space, and what it's like being a startup here, or even some established companies, and what it takes to get going and be successful.
Yep. So today we're going to have a conversation with a former pro skateboarder who became a blockchain entrepreneur with several successful startups under his belt, including Popstand, and he has a new project called Chirp we're going to be learning about. We're going to talk to him about trends in the crypto and blockchain space and get some insight on what entrepreneurs and first-time founders need to know about building a successful business. And he should know he's done it several times. So let's just go ahead and dive in because he's waiting, looks like in the red light district. Kurt Braget, out in California, and is a founder of actually a couple of businesses. So first of all, Kurt, welcome to the Crypto Business Podcast.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys. My background is from Cyberpunk. So from the game that's going to come out, man, I'm really excited. And so this is me just like, anticipating that game coming out. It has Keanu Reeves in it. How could you not be excited?
Well, yeah, of course.
So he's half a Bill and Ted. So doing a little homework and research coming into the before the show, I realized, Kurt, that you and I may have crossed paths in previous lives. You're a former pro skateboarder, and I'm a former pro skateboard announcer.
Yeah. I that's why you have that sexy announcer voice. I recognized it from somewhere.
I always love it when a guest calls me sexy. It doesn't matter.
I was a big fan of the X Games, so I think that's super cool. And I think that skateboarding is, probably a big part of my story and like how I kind of got started in my life, like feeling like, it was my first job really. And one of the guys who was on my team during that time won the X Games, I think 3 or 4 times in a row, Carlos de Andrade.
Brazilian street skater.
Yeah. I never had, maybe I just never had the guts to go do it. I was a competitive skateboarder, but the skateboarding, when we first started, it was really kind of like this punk rock type of thing. Yep. And we were very anti-corporate. Like we had Nike trying to sponsor us, Vans trying to sponsor us, and we're like, no, thank you, because it was really like that. Like you didn't fuck with corporations when you in this certain faction of skateboarders, and it was a really hard transition. But I was a big fan, secretly. So
well, early on, and I started with X in winter '97, summer '98, and it really was. Well, it wasn't grassroots at that point. It was, ESPN was the machine behind it. But you talk about corporate sponsors like Nike trying to get in. Vans was always, part of skateboard culture, at least commercial skateboard culture. Yep. And Nike finally did break through years later and have an impact on the market with skaters and BMX riders. with their Nike SB brand. But what was amazing is at the time we were all obviously younger and just amazed that these alternative action sports were now making it to television. It still wasn't mainstream, right? But it was making it to ESPN2. And to watch that brand grow and scale globally. And I remember we took it to Thailand, Asian X Games in the late 90s, and even had a Disney Channel Junior X Games. And at that time, these kids, you know, as they're setting up the venue, they paint the logo in a parking lot and build the venue around it. The kids would come skate and ride just around the logo, and that was like extreme to them, right? We're X Games, we ride around the logo, and but these kids, all of their influence was from watching what American skaters and Brazilian skaters and the other athletes were doing on X Games, and to watch them evolve year after year. And at that point, it was skateboarding, it was BMX, and it was inline skating. And to watch those kids evolve from just riding around the parking lot around the logo to actually qualifying to come compete in California and compete on the world stage and actually rank was amazing. I mean, you watched a whole culture evolve out of that product.
Yeah, I this one kid I taught, I used to teach. I was an instructor in skateboarding for about 4 years, from the time I was like 14 until I was 18. And I taught, you know, a class of 40 to 50 people at Skate Street. Is like one of the biggest skate parks in California. And one of the kids that I taught, and I brought him in, and I just really liked him, Mikey Anderson. He was, I think, 11 or something when he started there. And that guy grew up to, I mean, he is one of like the main skaters of Vans now. He's skated with all of like my favorite heroes. He skates with the Gons constantly, and like he's one of my favorite skaters. But yeah, I mean, it's interesting to like have that overlap because it reminds me of what's going on in crypto, which is like there was at first it was kind of like you only had these kind of hackers, you know, doing it at first.
Right.
And it reminds me of like what's happening with TRON and STEEM. Like TRON is like maybe the Nike or something that's trying to like come in. And the way that we saw it was like, we're building this community for years and years and years and having police beat us up and steal our stuff and, you know, being ridiculed and called punks for years. And now Nike's going to come in and just kind of take all of our money. So like, that's kind of the way we saw it. And
Sure.
It's kind of what the STEAM community is doing right now. If you look at, cause that's like one of the big news things. And I know we're not doing news, but
That's that's a good analogy.
Yeah, like Steam has been building their community for 4 years, and now all of a sudden Tron and all these exchanges come in, and they're just like, yeah, we're running the show now, and like all your money belongs to us. And it's like, wait a minute, we've been building this for 4 years, you know, and it's been pretty rough actually.
It's been interesting, and I'm glad to hear you mention those two projects, because I was gonna bring that up, and I guess we could go. We're there now, so we might as well. That brings an interesting just dynamic, and Brad and I were actually talking about this as it was as Tron made the first move to really a hostile, aggressive move to take over Steam, and this is the first, at least at scale, attempt at a hostile takeover and a consolidation in the market. And, you know, we know that there's thousands of projects out there, and a lot of them are going to amount to nothing. A lot of them do amount to nothing. There are some really innovative ideas that maybe just lack the leadership or the team to drive it into a real commercial product. Yep. But there are guys like Justin Sun, who is clearly an entrepreneur and a hustler, and he's trying to make stuff happen. Yeah. So are we going to start seeing more consolidation in the market?
I mean, I think that it's kind of already happened in a way. That's sort of the way that I see the EOS blockchain, right? Is that it's happening. It's actually, it feels like it's in the future. And even with the narrative that they have of Steam 2.0 and voice in a lot of these products. I think it's kind of happened in a way because if you look at the block producers on EOS mainnet, you'll see that a lot of them are already these kind of companies that are sort of running the show and exchanges and things like that. And there's some great ones. I'm not trying to say that there aren't. There's a lot of really great ones like, that aren't an exchange. But yeah, I mean, it's happening. And think about it in this way. It's like big business has always really kind of controlled money and how money moves around. And this is like their game. And so I think that crypto people really believing that they're going to come in, and like I believed when I first bought Bitcoin back in the day, I thought it was like, anarchy money and it was against the system, and that now we're going to own our own money, which I think eventually is going to be true. But right. I think that these bigger businesses are going to run the show and kind of come in and hijack a lot of the action for sure.
So before, I was sorry, Brad, I was just going to say, before we get too deep, just a little bit on your background and your companies, how you got into this space.
That's where I was headed, Keith.
Yeah. Yeah. So, just a short story is that a company that I was building in 2011, 2012 was a micro funding in Fiat for short videos. We were a little ahead of our time, but it was called How Much. It was named by Jimmy Kimmel, actually. And before it was called Dare Me To. And I was the CTO at this business that came through Amplify in LA. And I built a payment system for, group funding of small video content. It's actually really still feels like a brilliant idea to me today. But Draper funded this, and I started looking into Tim Draper because I didn't know who he was, and I discovered Coinbase, and from there just went down the rabbit hole. Like that's what brought me into it. Bitcoin and Coinbase was what really inspired me to get into the space, and I guess I owe it to Tim Draper actually for being like as active as he is, because I probably would have just learned about it later and eventually got into it, but that was pretty early in 2011, 2012 to be buying Bitcoin. I mean, it felt like you were dealing drugs or something at that point.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
That's way early. When you went from, you were in the skateboarding world, you were making an income from it. When did you start ending up in the tech side of things, and what kind of got you into being a CTO and getting there first?
I love to write, and I was kind of, learning about writing and creating art, and a lot of my background is in art and athletics. And I think that I just kept going down the rabbit hole. Like I was writing my books. I've written a lot of books, and I used to publish my own zines back in the day and sell them like on the street or sell them to people or do readings. I traveled around. I was in this organization called Poets and Writers, and I did a lot of readings like for, filled up colleges and stuff like that. And I started getting more into the art side of like printmaking, and that led me into digital art, and I was learning digital art. And then I started thinking like, where's art going? And that felt like programming, like people who could program art were really leading in art. And then I started thinking of screens as the new canvas, right? Like canvases are kind of outdated. Like, you still go to a museum and you see a Van Gogh. It's like that shit died a long time ago, but now we're glued to a screen 24/7. And to me, that's like a new media. And so programming and learning how to control that media was really just another step in art. And that led me into programming, C++ and all that stuff. And I was just obsessed. And it helped me, like coming from a skateboarding and art background, it sort of helped me to connect to the world a little bit more, rather than going from somebody where like police were chasing you down a back alley to like you're actually working at a corporation and making good money was kind of cool to me. Like I could still be into philosophy and logic and my art, but still be making money. And that was really cool to me. So that just got me deeper into it.
That's great. So you were really combining kind of the tech skills with making a living, but in the rest of your life, you could be using the same skills for making art. And that just took you down that path. That's really cool.
Yeah, I love that the creativity and the art side is what drew you into it, and that you saw the potential in new media.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, like right around the time that mobile phones came out, I felt like that is the thing to be into, and so I quit. I quit working in corporate around 2010, and just decided that I'll focus just on mobile phones and building like web applications and just kind of like new applications. And so I've been doing that. I mean, I've been doing it for about 15 years, but I did it in corporate first, and then just kind of just decided. I've been doing it myself ever since 2010 or so.
So, and that opens the door to the next question. Popstand, and
Yep.
and that led to Chirp. So, tell us about Popstand and how that led to other things.
Yeah, so Popstand is a software business, and we mostly build crypto related software these days. But that wasn't true at first. We built a lot of medical applications, just pretty much any kind of clients we could get at first.
Sure.
We weren't really too picky. But then we started, and it was a consultancy. Like I had been CTO at so many different businesses and startups, thanks to Amplify, the accelerator here in LA.
Oh, cool.
To where it was just like, I just started seeing a pattern. It's like every business needs a CTO, and I have a kind of a differing view. Like I don't believe that companies should be hiring and giving 25% of their business to a CTO. I think it's ridiculous because the way that we build applications is getting easier these days, and like no code is a perfect example. The no code revolution, I think, is a really great example. And so I just kind of switched from being a CTO at many different businesses. I just realized I was a consultant, and then built my own consultancy. And then another friend of mine, Chris, who's my co-founder now at Popstand, he had his own consultancy too. And we just merged them together because I was a little bit more heavy on the product and kind of biz side, and he was more heavy on like DevOps and programming. And so it was a really good mix. And we started with about 4 people, and then we kind of vary between like 15 and 20 people now. We've grown a lot over the last like 2 years. And then, slowly we just like, I think it's because my own interest in crypto just got deeper and deeper that I started realizing that, businesses are actually coming online and wanting to build crypto applications. Whereas at first it was like people just wanted to buy and sell Bitcoin. There wasn't really an app layer for blockchains or for crypto in the beginning. But now that that's there, I just, it kind of mixed my two interests together. I have a software business. I love crypto. Let's build crypto software. It's kind of like almost too easy for it to happen. It wasn't some like epiphany or anything like that.
That's great.
And how did you go about cultivating crypto clients?
It's actually been pretty easy for me. I mean, I won't it is a labor of love, and it does take time. And because I'm passionate about it, I don't do a ton of outreach for the customers. For me, it's more about finding people that I believe in and becoming friends with them, and really having the empathy and really caring about what they're doing. And some of the clients that we have, it was really like, wow, that project is amazing, and I think I can add value there. And that's really how it is, and then, go to conferences, meet people, talking to you guys. I feel confident that just talking to you guys will lead to some kind of business deal or some kind of customer for sure. Cool. And that's just kind of how I do it. We don't do advertising or anything like that.
That's great.
And I think that it's because it's sort of these things are expensive. So it's not you can't just be hey, build your crypto app. It's not as easy to do something like that because these are big decisions for people to make. So there's a lot of trust involved.
Sure. And it's a big commitment, right? It's not yeah, we can, give us a few grand and we can make it happen. You got to be able to commit to the scope of the project. And this is something that Brad and I run into with our clients. It's yes, we can get you to this point. We can get you launch ready, but that's the starting line. That's not the finish line. And you got to be able to go. You now have to be able to implement and execute and carry the ball down the field.
Yep.
Yeah.
Do you find it tough to balance in the time between the projects like Chirp that you're doing versus, the actual work you have to do to pay the bills?
Yeah, frankly, yes. It's hard, but I think that I am a believer that when things get difficult and you keep applying solutions, that's a growth. That's
Sure.
how you grow. And so, for example, in the software business, it was wow, we have too much work. It's like, cool, that means we have more money. Let's hire more people. You know what I mean? And so I do think that these things should always kind of feel like they're running out of control. And then you're constantly trying to like chase the sun in a way. And that is how growth happens. And that's kind of my take on it. And I was reading about a really great company recently, Zendesk. And the guy was talking about, the founder was talking about, I think it was in Startup Land, this book. And the guy was talking about how he was at the stock exchange and they're like ringing the bell because he's during his IPO. And he was like, man, this business has been running out of control, like literally up until this moment, like up until the moment to where it's $1 billion business. It's just felt totally out of control. Like it's just falling apart at the seams. And I think that that's probably kind of the way that it feels when you're experiencing that kind of growth. And so I have a hard time managing it, frankly. Yeah, it's hard. And I get mad and I complain to other people that are working on the project. They're not working hard enough. Like I can be a real asshole sometimes, straight up. So
I am feeling so much better about myself right now, Brad.
Because he is a real asshole. No, he's, I think that's true of anybody running a business. There's so much chaos. And then a lot of people present kind of this, smooth, cool corporate impression. Everything's running smoothly, and it's. I don't think it's ever that way. And
I don't ever do that. Yeah,
good. Now you don't seem like the top that would put on the
hasn't gotten that way yet. Anyways, right?
No, I mean, I think that I haven't worked at a company larger than 1,800 people in my career, but and that was a mashed together roll up, but I never experienced anything except that. Even in companies that had been doing $20 million a year for 14 years, same thing, same product, same tech, everything, there was still always this kind of like, I can't believe this thing's still running,
Yeah.
So how did you ended up? You did work in this STEEM project, and is that where kind of I thought I just wanted to make sure because you were talking about
just kind of on my mind, but I have worked on quite a few just kind of projects that are crypto related since 2012 2013, but STEEM I wasn't really interested in STEEM for some reason, and I wasn't and I've made some big mistakes in crypto. Like I wasn't interested in Ethereum, and I feel like that was kind of a mistake, like maybe from a speculative point of view. I thought it was interesting, like from a technical point of view, but I didn't like get involved that much. I was really into EOS. Like EOS was the one that I really got deep into because I was sort of like a maximalist before. I just thought,
really?
All these things are taking steam away from like the real cryptocurrency, and that's Bitcoin. And, I think that was also maybe a mistake too.
That's really interesting. A maximalist to non. That's not a story you hear every day. That's pretty fascinating. Now it wasn't because of a lack of conviction. It sounds like more like the realization that shit, there's other stuff out here, and this is going to scale way beyond what everybody thinks.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think it was because when you're into Bitcoin early, and I think that some of these I call them maximalist Australopithecus.
Yeah,
they're sort of like becoming they're becoming extinct, I think, and I was probably one, but then I got the upgrade. So, I think that a lot of people, it kind of stayed with them. It's like Bitcoin is the only thing that they're but then I think probably being a software developer too, it's like, well, Bitcoin doesn't have smart contracts, and and it's kind of only a currency. And then when you have ETH and a lot of these smart contract platforms, like they have this business logic inside of it, and they really are kind of these and I started to believe more in the concept of the DApp, and now I really still believe it, even though after the market's kind of crashed, people are like, fuck all these DApps, they're not going anywhere, and these tokens are just shit coins and stuff like that. And I consider myself like more of like a shitcoin maximalist now. Like I like all of them, and I think that if you think about the internet, like when the internet first came out, they're like, why does this company need it? Why does pets.com or why is Morgan Stanley saying they have a website now? Like, I don't know, like that happened in the stock market at one point in time. And then it became, why do these companies have tokens? And it feels like a very similar thing. Like, why would they have a DApp? But now you can see that, Joe's down the street that nobody cares about has a website and makes money off of it,
Yeah.
That's kind of what I believe the trajectory for the DAPPS are.
I remember I went through the whole dot-com thing and launched one of the first SaaS companies in 1998. We were acquired by a company that was rolling up hosting companies and web companies. And I remember I was in a bar with a bunch of coworkers, and I saw there was a football game or something on the screen, and I saw a commercial for Pennzoil, and it was the first time I saw a website domain on a television commercial. And I said, that's it. It's over. This is where it happens right now. This has become a tool for more than what we thought it could be. But and I was thinking about when you talked about kind of price crashes and people giving up. We went through that exact same thing in 2001 and 2002. Everyone just kind of burned out. Nobody cared about pets.com or anything else anymore. Everybody was licking their wounds. And then there were companies that just kept plugging through and kept going after that mission, the Amazons of the world, those kinds of folks. And that's, I think, what comes out of this, right? You shed some of the crap, and the guys who are determined and driven to use the tech and the capabilities of tokens are going to be the ones that actually make something happen with it.
100%. I mean, like, getting through that like trough of despair moment, I think, is really key. And I tell, because like sometimes when you're building these startups, so I've built a lot of them, whether they're funded or just self-funded. I've probably spent millions of dollars building these things myself. And it's like, sometimes when we're working with people that are a little bit newer, and like, I'll just be like, look, man, like, the only time we're ever going to really make progress is like, this shit's going to get boring for you. It's going to, like, people are going to tell you that you're dumb, because it's happened before. We've built things where people were just like, that's dumb, or you're not going to want to do it many days. And it's just going to feel like, fuck, we're not making any progress. And when it gets boring and everybody leaves and people think you're stupid, like, that's really, like, to me, that's an indicator to just kind of keep chugging along. And you have to do it. Even if you are truly stupid, if you never, if you never go through that at some point in time, like, it reminds me of like grit. Like, if you've never gone through that, where like you're just going against all odds, it's like to me, that's a tool that I have. Because when I was skateboarding, it kind of goes back to skateboarding. Like, I was literally falling on my face. Police were trying to arrest me. You were seen as like a punk, and this is dumb. Like, why would anybody ever do this? It probably feels like how gamers felt a few years back.
Sure.
Right? And then it was like, all of a sudden, sponsors and people want to put you on TV. I was in a fucking movie. Like, there was all these things that were happening where it was like, now I can do whatever I want. There's endless amounts of money I can make. I'm signing autographs and shit, and girls like me all of a sudden. Like, that was and never, it was kind of like, but I went through this period where I was literally grinding my face on the street, and I cried. Like, sure. I used to cry, and so the fact that I have that experience, to me, is so key. Like, if you never went through that, like, I feel sorry for you. You know what I mean? Like, that's kind of how it is.
Yeah. I mean, it's what I tell my kids all the time. The pain is what is going to make the rest of your life good. Because if you don't suffer, if you don't go through it, my wife always wants to shield them. Right. And it's like, if we're shielding them, they're not learning how to overcome. And that's exactly what it is. I mean, I've failed enough times in my life, or pushed through something that I thought everyone else said you're just a complete idiot for even be putting your time into this, and it makes a huge difference when you finally get out the other side. Even if you don't make $1 billion from it, to know that you finished, or not, nothing's ever finished, but to know that you got to where you at least wanted to be to start, right? So,
I feel like we're becoming the inspirational podcast.
There we go. Let's go for it. We'll start quoting
Gary Vaynerchuk?
Yeah, something like that.
We're going to take a quick break and be right back with more of the Crypto Business Podcast.
Well, what else are you working on besides Chirp? And then let's get into Chirp. Are you working on some of your own projects right now? Or
Yeah, there's some things that are coming up that are really very exciting, but they're very related to Chirp. And Chirp is what I spend a lot of my time working on. And, you know, the projects that I can talk about are mostly EOS related. So I work a lot on Chirp. I work a lot on Dmail as well. Dmail is another app that we've built. And it basically allows email on a blockchain. And
wow.
Is
that out yet?
It is. It's out and it's live. And
where do we get it?
You can go to dmail.co, and it works on EOS and EOS mainnet, and it works on Telos mainnet. And what it does is it basically replaces, so you don't use an email ID. Like everybody logs into a site with an email ID, right? Your email ID and your password. But like on a blockchain, you don't have an email. And so you might use DAPPS with your wallet address. So kind of the way that I imagine it is like, imagine the internet before email addresses. That's what a blockchain is. But there will probably never be an email address because people don't trust centralized services. And so you already have an address on a blockchain, which is your wallet address. And what Dmail does is it allows you to send email messages from one wallet address to another wallet address. Nice. And you sign with your key, just like you do when you send crypto. So imagine your email payload is really an asset that you own, that when you send it from point A to point B, you sign with your private key, just like you do money. And I think that the Bitcoin network, a lot of people are kind of skeptical of this because a lot of it is sending money, like it's money, money, money. Bitcoin with a lowercase b is money. Like Bitcoin with an uppercase b is just a blockchain. Like it could literally be an email that you're sending.
So what would that do to, say, spam?
So we have a token. It's called the mail token. And when you sign an email message, what you're really doing is signing a transaction with a token, and you have to have these tokens in order to send them. Nice. And so in theory, a spammer can't send free email. They have to acquire these tokens in some way. And there's two ways to acquire them. One, you could probably buy them somewhere. I don't know because we're not on exchanges. But you could have somebody else send you some, which means you're kind of like a meaningful actor. Whereas today with spam, you get into an email and you can just you can create these fake addresses,
right,
or blasting messages, and it's kind of terrible, you know. But then you have to trust Google to filter your spam, which is fine, but they're a centralized service, and for us, we want it to be fully decentralized.
That's cool. So you said EOS and Telos, it's on.
Yeah.
It's compatible with. Now, is that something that you could then integrate that communication channel into other dApps, right? And add like threaded conversations and potentially use it in other ways?
Yeah, for sure. So like right now, there is a layer of software that you kind of need to use in order to use Dmail. But the way that I imagine it is that mail tokens are fully, you can send a mail token with a wallet. Like, no, you don't need permission to do that. And people can send those tokens anywhere they want. Sure. And in the future, what I would love is for there just to be an open marketplace for email where people can buy and sell their mail tokens, so that what they're really doing is buying the right to send a message. And so if you're a company that does want to spam, you can acquire them in bulk and then send them to different people.
Nice.
All right, so let's dive into Chirp. And this is something that is actually pretty near and dear to my heart because I am a content creator and producer by trade. So tell us how you came up with this idea and why you've got so much focus and attention on it.
Yeah, so it kind of goes back to the whole baby internet thing. And there's this full narrative, like a lot of the products that I work on, they're really very related to like blockchain's the new internet, really. There's this kind of running theme. And so what kind of things do you build on a new internet? And you guys probably know it a lot better than I do because I wasn't an internet user in the early days, but wasn't interested. But in the early internet, you had like message boards, you know, like people just needed simple things. Like they don't need like these complex, like I call them flux capacitors, because they're like in Ethereum, you know, they're building all these very complicated apps that do these very complicated things. And that's great. I don't want to shit talk anybody, but when you come to a new blockchain, you're an enthusiast. You love this chain. So for example, Link's chain, where we built Chirp, a lot of people are going to believe in this project and they want to communicate. And so I kind of see Chirp as like a place where a new blockchain, where people who are excited about it can come and share content and communicate with each other. And I think that that was a big pattern in 2017, where you had these people really excited about a token. They'd join a Telegram group. I mean, it was like the biggest, that was like the main thing that people did during that period. And so just imagine you had something like Chirp where people could use those tokens to then exchange and move and share content and speak to each other. But that's an actual application. You're not just feeding into Telegram that you may or may not trust. And I knew that voice was going to come out as well. And I just kind of wanted to roll my own. I wanted to build a social app where people can simply come, post content, see other people's content, and connect with each other, sort of a water cooler for a blockchain. So it doesn't have to be on one blockchain. Like I could build this on Steem if I wanted to, because the way that you interact with Chirp is you have a token that belongs to that chain, and everything you do, you're making these microtransactions with that token. So it could be a custom token. I could build it on Bitcoin if I really wanted to.
So how is it? How do you differentiate what Chirp is doing and what your vision is from, say, TRON and STEEMIT?
Yeah. So the difference, I think, is that I've always found STEEMIT to be a very low quality product. Like
me too.
I love that it's this crypto thing, but like from a product, like when I wear my product developer hat, I just think it's trash. Like it's a lot of spam, and there's just a lot of crap on there. And I think it's not a very easy user experience. And so a lot of it is like, we want to make this available to just regular people. And if you sign up for STEEMIT, I mean, it's a fucking nightmare. Like you have to go through all these keys, and with Chirp, you just sign up with a phone number and you're in. I mean, that's all you really do. And you actually get a blockchain wallet, and you do have a key, and you do sign transactions with a key. And STEEMIT is more of like long form content, like kind of like a medium on blockchain, I would say. And Chirp, I would say, is more like a Twitter for a blockchain. And I think that I believe in micro content. Like you start with, you know, the church had their books, and then you got the printing press, and then all of a sudden normal people have their books, and then you have pamphlets, and then you have zines, and you have the internet, then you have long form content like books and audiobooks. And what I see happening is that content is just getting smaller and smaller and smaller. So now you have Twitter. And I think that consuming small pieces of content, but that's crypto incentivized, like if I'm a content creator, I should be making money when I do this, not Twitter or somebody else. And that's what it's about. It's about empowering content creators to make money with the kind of content that they're already creating. And that's Twitter. Not a lot of people want to write these long blog posts, in my opinion. So,
but even the ones that do would be great if they're compensated. And, you know, one of the questions that I guess really we have to see how this all evolves, but I imagine the first benefit just from the amount of content and the quality of content that gets distributed is if people have to pay to post or pay to share or engage, there's going to be a lot less bullshit, and people are going to, you know, because people aren't going to be just making it rain with every piece of content that they want to engage with. And so it may mean that engagement drops, but the quality of engagement gets much better. That remains to be seen. And none of these apps have really evolved long enough or been around long enough for us to really know.
Yeah, and it's a really new thing, but kind of I believe in a more like micro transaction economy where I think that this is one of the great things about crypto is that if you really look at what is the differentiator between fiat and crypto, right? Like when I was, and this is something I have experience in, right? And it's kind of this whole long story that I won't tell, but when I was building this micro funding platform on Fiat, one of the problems was if I wanted to give $1 to a video or to a content creator, it has to go through this whole Fiat payment system where there's all these fees and there's a lot of friction there. But like I could just look at a post on Chirp, for example, and it doesn't do this now, but I plan to do it later. Just for looking at a post, you should be sent a little bit of cryptocurrency. And you can do that with crypto because microtransactions are cheap and fast. So
right.
there's no problem in sending a penny to, and it kind of feeds into this larger narrative where I think that people are going to be doing microtransactions constantly. Like I have it's not a patented technology, but Ford is kind of doing something similar to this. But like imagine cars when they do a certain behavior that AI could microfund that behavior very easily. And the only way you could do something like that is with a cryptocurrency because you have microtransactions. And so I imagined a social network, and Chirp would be a place where you pay to follow, you pay to post, you pay to like. And it feels bad when you hear that, pay to do that, but it's because we have all this PTSD from fiat currencies where you might not even think about it as paying. You might think about it as like sharing a piece or something like that.
Yeah, and I think when you're actually earning back and forth, that becomes an easier concept for people to grasp, and I think it then becomes kind of a philosophical thing. It's kind of like, I mean, this is far out in the future, but it's kind of like the idea of Bitcoin maximalists that say, what happens if Bitcoin is the only way to express and share value, and we don't have fiat as a representation of that value against Bitcoin anymore, or against another crypto? That I think that once people get used to conceptually thinking, okay, this is just going back and forth, that becomes an easier thing to do. So it sounds like that's kind of what you're going for with the platform.
Yeah, I just want, just simply, I want people to do things like Twitter, but being able to enjoy exchanging cryptocurrencies. And I didn't see that anywhere. And so that's why I wanted to build it. And it's just really as simple as that.
How are people reacting to it?
Yeah, some people get angry about it.
Really?
Some people I've been.
Who gets angry about it?
I've been called stupid more on this product than any other one.
Wow.
Before. And I kind of like that because a previous product that I worked on in the past, people were saying was pretty stupid, but I'm pretty sure it's probably the most successful mobile, one of the most successful, probably top 5 most successful crypto apps like Blockfolio, which is like when we were first working on this app. I mean, I'm telling you, the amount of people that were like, why would anybody want to track how much money I have in my crypto portfolio? And I only give a shit about Bitcoin and whatever, and that turned out to not age very well, And so I think that it's going to be the same thing here where people are like, why would I pay to post? Well, you pay to post because you're making an investment in your content and you're showing that you're a stakeholder of this asset. And if it has any value, you're just going to make the money back right away. So the only kind of there are some kind of complainers that come in and they're like, I don't want to spend, but it's pretty much almost guaranteed in our system right now where you just make the money back right away. If you get 3 likes, you returned your investment. I mean, how hard is it to get that?
Right, well, and the beauty of it is you're ratcheting up the quality, right? I mean, It's going to make people think about the time they put into it because they want to invest enough to get it back what they're having to spend to post. And I think that's really brilliant.
But for people who are using, content to brand themselves as experts and in a content marketing application, it makes total sense. It's going to maybe reduce the amount of things that people post, pictures of their food and their kids, but maybe that's not the app for that type of content.
Yeah, I think so. I think that we think about it like an economy and like what I really imagine people would do is bring information to me that I want to fund. It's like I'm micro funding their content. And that's kind of the way that I imagine it. Yeah, it could be, I bet people's pictures of people's cats, it's like, hey, if your cat's cute, I'm going to like it. If your cat isn't really that cute, then fucking get the fuck out of here with your cat photo. You know what I mean? Like, I don't think it's not like you have to come in and be a brainiac. I mean, I'll tell you straight up, some of the stuff that gets upvoted a lot is some racy stuff where girls might be wearing a little bit less clothes. And I'm not, super proud to say that, but just think about it. It's like people will pay for something that's valuable, and it's not pay. Like, I think it's like less than 5 cents or something when you when it all is said and done, and it could be even less in the future. I don't know.
So
that's great.
Let me tell you what drew me to the concept, and it was actually something that I had conceptualized earlier, because, and it's not in micro content, it's in larger scale content, longer form content, and you can, I'm sure, think back to plenty of skate videos that were killer content, right?
Oh yeah.
And back in those days, they were coming out on VHS or DVD or whatever it was, and there was not, they were typically sponsored, right, by the skate company or the shoe company, or maybe there's a little co-op, co-marketing going on it or co-branding going on it, but they were not real money makers. They were great for building brand image, and so they helped in that regard. But the content producer, he was contracted to do the piece, and that was about it.
Yeah, they're kind of like marketing pieces, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And so my background between X Games and my run through ESPN, I also made it to the outdoor sports side, and specifically in fishing. And there's a lot of hunting and fishing shows, or there used to be, on ESPN, and now those moved to other networks like Outdoor Channel and that whole realm. And the model in that space is typically where content producer pays to produce the content, sells their own commercials, then pays said network, depending on the network. In the case of like an NBC Sports or Discovery Channel, 6 figures to broadcast the content. And you have to, of course, follow all of their guidelines and have their timing and their graphics package and whatnot. Well, that is, in a word or a few, a shitty model. It's a loss leader. It's impossible. And so I started creating shorter form content. It was paid, by brands who are wanting to market their brands, and they were using it to market their brands. But lots of guys came to me who are producing their own shows and said, how do we do this, and how can we produce it cheaper so I can make money? Because after I pay the network, I got nothing left. Well, do you really want to degrade your production quality? You still want to make a good looking show? Producing a cheaper show isn't necessarily the answer, but a better distribution model is. And so guys started doing shorter form stuff that didn't have to follow the network model, didn't have to be 22 minutes and 32 seconds, and started putting them on YouTube and paid a few bucks to boost the post, right? And you could then get comparable or even far greater eyeballs on that content for a fraction of the price.
100%. Yeah, I mean, like you use a little bit of capital to jumpstart it, and if it has social value, people will spread it around, and that's where it's going. Like, look at Quibi, for example, and TikTok. It's short form video content, and it's going crazy. It's because people prefer it.
Yeah. Right. And the fact that you can do it and share it on social that way, whether it's the old way on a traditional platform like,
you have a landline
like YouTube.
There? Was that a landline?
No, that's
his cheesy.
That's my landline. Yes,
I'm just fucking with you.
And
he's got a rotary
telegram
dial
back there
him.
too. Yeah, rotary. I'm fucking with my kids. See if you can figure out how to use this. So it could be on a traditional, and it's funny that we're calling YouTube a traditional platform now, or on a newer app like you're talking about. And
Yep.
for content creators to be able to get earn some money that way is a tremendous opportunity. The networks have been raping these producers for years, and that model is going away.
Yeah, the model, I feel like it's broken in a similar way on Twitter and YouTube. Like, let's imagine a story. Like, I'm a content creator. I got to do all this work to create the content. I might not have an expense, but it's my time. It's valuable. I create that content. Then I might need to run some ads behind it, or maybe I'm really great at what I do, but it's hard to kind of break in if you're not, and it takes time. Like, even Gary Vaynerchuk was saying that he felt like he didn't really kind of come into his own until, like, I think it was like 500 videos that he had made or something. Wow. And he just wasn't getting any traction. And this is a pretty normal thing that I've seen. And so I got to, like, get this content. And if another user can't just pay that content, it's kind of weird. It's like the way they pay is indirectly with their eyeballs at scale, so that then an advertiser can give them a piece of a lot of money that they're taking from the table. And so what I feel like Chirp can be dedicated to is, it's about empathy for the content creator and how they're making money. Like, I believe that we can still make money and build a successful product if we remove ourselves from that equation. It might be that now we're making a small percent and we can still build a great business, but where I think that if we have these advertisers that come in, they're giving us money, or it's almost like we're taking too much away from it. And I think that that's how Twitter and YouTube, they're actually running a risk. And you can see that YouTube kind of knows that, because they have Patreon and a lot of these other things where they're like, wow, people are building these gray markets or these secondary markets on our platform. We need to do something about that. Like, that's missed opportunity and revenue, and that puts us at risk. And so I saw that YouTube is actually rolling out a baked in monetization kind of strategy, and that they're rolling it out to some people. But I think that this is where just the monetization alone and people spending their labor to do it is the point of disruption for a lot of these people. It's not like MySpace was like, it just looked like crap, and then Facebook kind of undercut them to make a better app, really. You know, it was really, they disrupted them on the design. I feel like they disrupted them in design, and that's why it came. But I feel like now a lot of these networks like Facebook and fucking Twitter, YouTube, their point of disruption, I feel like, is, how do I make money as a content producer? If like Library, for example, LBRY, that one has been taking off because they're not only disrupting YouTube on the way that you monetize content, but also in the censorship. So I feel like censorship and monetization, which strangely crypto has both of those things. Decentralization is more, it allows more free speech, right? Right. And then the cryptocurrency itself allows more unique monetization strategies. So I'm, trying to say that crypto-based businesses have a very good shot at disrupting these bigger content creating businesses.
So I think you're absolutely right. And I think the viewer's experience is enhanced, right? I mean, the constant interruptions in the consumer side on YouTube and everywhere else from an advertising perspective is, we all know it's a level of annoyance that people are just used to skipping now, right? So the revenue model for Twitter starts to decline, or YouTube starts to decline, and the value that they get from every ad starts to decline. At the same time, the value for the viewer and the consumer is declining because they're skipping over the ads as fast as they can.
Yeah, so I've heard that teenagers call them skip ads now.
Yeah, my kids.
That's the word they use for it. Like, oh yeah, like I'm watching the skip ad. Like that's
exactly. My kids have it down to a science. They know which one is going to be the 4-second wait, which one is going to be, I got to watch the whole thing through. I mean, they're straight through it.
And think of it. This actually goes back to where we began this conversation, talking about the skate culture of the kids in Thailand who never saw skateboarding until they saw it on X Games and started skating around the lot, and then evolved and progressed, watched the videos, and turned into phenomenal athletes themselves.
Yeah.
And, the generation that's our kids' age, Brad and I both have kids that are, 10 and 14. They're growing up with this. And imagine in 10 or 15 years, and I just saw an article yesterday that said The Simpsons had predicted like so many things in culture that took 15 years to mature, including Trump being president. And an episode last week said that Bitcoin is the money. And so there you go. Bart Simpson reignited skateboarding in the U.S. and now he's going to ignite crypto.
Yeah, that's true. I wonder if I was subtly influenced because I was a fan of the Simpsons and the way Bart, like maybe I became a skateboarder because of Bart Simpson. I don't know.
Yeah, subconsciously.
There was one other.
It could happen.
There was one other little thing that I wanted to kind of mention just in this context is like I'm really into sci-fi, and I feel like we're living in an advertising like alternate reality. Like it doesn't have to be this way, but I feel like we ended up here. Like why is it that all of these sites need to have ad revenue? Like is that the superior model? Is like it's definitely not the only way that it needs to be, but
it's not the superior model, it's the old model.
Yeah,
it's the one that they know.
But if you want to look at it in terms of like, I'm starting a business and what's going to make the most money, I don't know if it's like maybe SaaS is the most like Netflix, maybe the subscription model, because I'm not seeing ads on Netflix, right? And so maybe this is the time where we're going to get away from, because it does feel weird. It fucks with the continuity. You're watching something and then all of a sudden, like you're watching like, I don't know, like a horror movie. And then all of a sudden here's some lady spraying Febreze or something. You know what I mean? It's like what the fuck? Like
it takes you out of it. Yeah.
Yeah. And it rips you out. It ruins the art. Like imagine if that was the revenue model for canvas painting, like Van Gogh, and then there's a fucking Coca-Cola like sign on his painting. Like that's what we have right now. It's that ridiculous, but we don't notice it because we're so deep in it, right?
Right.
Well, and I think that model is shifting. I think, look, you look at TikTok, there is no advertising yet on TikTok, or at least I haven't seen it yet, or my kids haven't mentioned it yet. And now this whole generation that's the number one thing they spend their time on during the course of a day besides YouTube and school is getting used to not having it, right? Yeah. And so I think that, I think it's the same thing. It's funny. I teach, I go to my kids' career day at school, and I do a walkthrough on how money works. I do role playing where some of the kids are bankers and some of the kids are business owners and consumers, and I walk them all through it.
And a politician and a prostitute.
Yeah. But what's interesting is everyone says to me, well, there's no way in hell that a third grader is going to understand what are you doing, trying to talk to these kids about crypto and how money works. And you should see the looks on their faces when I ask the central bank to print more money in order to cover what the bank needs. And they look and they think, well, why the hell would it work that way? And they're all just like completely perplexed by it. And then I have parents come back to me and say, oh, Mr. Nickel must have been there this week because my kid came home and told me I needed to buy crypto or Bitcoin, right? And the whole point of telling you that is that for them, money doesn't have to be the way it always has been. And for them, content and art doesn't have to be the way it's always been for us, where it's advertising based. So I think that makes a lot of sense. Kind of the drive for this behind you is that it doesn't have to be, and it may not happen for, I'm 54 years old. It may not happen for my generation. It'll happen for me because I'm an adopter, but that group is going to pass by, and these kids are going to expect something better, right?
Yeah,
and
eventually they're going to learn or they're going to rebel. It kind of reminds me of punk music. It was like, what is it really? Well, it kind of reminds me of how startups are. Like, people aren't waiting to get permission or to have a fancy education in order to get in the mix. And that's kind of like what I try to advocate for. Like, I don't have a real fancy education, and I grew up as like really kind of a punk skateboarder. And that's what punk music was about too. It's like, well, we're going to play our guitars in a certain way that's not very sophisticated, but yet we're still going to be able to produce music that people really love to listen to. And I think that that's kind of like what startups are for me too, is that like, let's not wait for permission. Like a lot of people are saying, because there's EOS Voice, that's a $4 billion company. And, they're saying like, well, why would you build a product that's similar to it? It's because I don't need their permission. Like I want to roll my own and I want to make it the way that I want to make it, Right. And there's a lot of room for everybody to kind of create, right?
I think the other thing that feeds into that model when you were talking about that is that, have you seen that article, the 1,000 fans article that circulated around? The whole concept is a guy was writing advice to artists and was saying, you don't have to become Prince or some other big famous artist.
Right.
But if you build to 1,000 fans who are willing to subscribe Patreon to you or whatever, and you have a model that they can pay you for, then once you have that core group, you can get much bigger, but you can actually live on that and know that you're creating something that you wanted to create rather than trying to fit yourself into a world that doesn't necessarily fit what you want to do.
100%. I mean, like, I think that people underestimate that actually. Like, when you have a core fan base of 1,000 and you don't just grow to be really viral, often that means that you are doing something that you really care about and that people can connect with. Right. And what you'll see is, like, I was watching Elon Musk tweet about how Coachella sucks, right? He was like, don't cancel it because of coronavirus, cancel it because it sucks, right? And I thought that was hilarious. But I went to the first ever Coachella. And that's like kind of what happened with music. It's like you're making this really awesome music, like a band I was really into. I think they even played Coachella, was this band called Modest Mouse. And then it's like they start getting so much money and that now they need to appeal to these broader audiences. And then those first 1,000 fans, you kind of have to throw them under the bus in a way in order to get to the next step. That's why that's why Star Wars is so divided right now, in my opinion, is that they were making something for these like hardcore nerds at first, but now they're making shit for kids, right? Yeah. And it's because it's more money and it's a broader market. And you can't make this niche stuff. But I think that that's how everybody should start. And then you have to make the decision, do I sell out and I kind of throw my early fans under the bus? Because it's hard to maintain that. Like when you're building this niche stuff, I feel like, and that's who I actually build for. Like I will build for 10 fanatics. And I will like right now, Chirp, like really, if you look at it, thousands of people have used it. But there's like 10 people that are they're a little bit crazy, actually. They're, you know what I mean? And like, I like that. Like, I built an app in the past where people would come in and send thousands of messages in a day. And they were just totally psychotic. It was almost like I wanted to message them and just be like, you might want to talk to a psychologist or something. You know what I mean? But like, I feel like when you build a product like that, that's a really good place to start. And from that, if you know that 10 people really love it, 1 million people probably will too.
So
now that's a great analogy.
And,
Go ahead,
and that gets you to gets us to a point where it's something that every entrepreneur has to deal with. Chirp, you really have two sets of customers. You've got your content creators, and you got to attract content creators. And it sounds like you've already started doing that, and you've got some people posting some good content. And then you need subscribers. You need people coming in to engage in this content.
Yep.
And to convince them to pay. How do you go about reaching these markets, these two separate audiences, and getting them in there? Because you can't get the audience to come in until you have the content. You got to have a baseline of content, right? So you first, I imagine, have to get some content creators in there, and then you've got to go out and cultivate an audience. How do you do those?
Yeah, so this is definitely a lot that I would look to playbooks, because I was a heavy user on Quora. I think I've exceeded 10 million reads on Quora,
wow.
for example. And so, and then there's Reddit. Reddit almost sold to Yahoo for I think $10,000 or something ridiculous. Like they almost like it was something like they were just in shambles at one point in time. And a lot of this is like astroturfing and seeding, and a lot of people don't want to hear this stuff, but I think that frankly what I'm going to have to do, because right now I just wanted to, launch the beta and see how people think and, fix bugs and stuff like that. But I think that the strategy for us is going to be like, we're going to have to actually empower some of these content creators and pay them a little bit more, frankly, than people will come in later. And I do know a lot of these really great content creators in crypto. And I think starting in a niche of, mostly crypto content will be where we'll try to grow. And having a chain like Link's chain, which is now becoming Proton, that's led by Fred Krueger and Marshall Hayner. And Marshall Hayner is the CEO of Metal. And he just, drafted up these bills that are in Congress, and he's very supportive. The guy calls me and tells me that he supports what we're doing. And having the support of the chain, so we have access to tokens in order to pay people, is a really big deal for some of these social sites, because you don't want people just to go acquire the money on exchanges, or you have to pay these content creators, I think, straight up. And so my plan is to go anywhere between 10 and 50 really great content creators and paying them some small amount, enough to make it interesting for them to post content regularly, and allowing people to earn in the system enough that they want to pay it forward. I mean, really, a lot of this, we have to jumpstart it. And then I think from there, it becomes a situation where, people buy these tokens and they hold them, and there's a lot of speculators. And if it's, if I go, like, a lot of these people who hold cryptocurrency believe that if you are using the currency and that people are actively using it, that the prices and the community is going to grow. And I think that a lot of people can hold it, but spend a fraction of it. Like, one big insight I had about crypto, and this is why I think staking is such a big thing, is that people want to buy and hold crypto and they do not want to spend it. And I think that this is something that a lot of people probably wouldn't want to admit if it was true. But that's why staking is so sexy to people, because I can buy it, I can hold it, I can still use it because I'm staking.
I can still generate more, right?
Yeah. And so staking to me is like a lot of people have said staking is crap and they're trying to build value out of nothing, but it isn't, though, because people are buying this asset and using it. It's using your money without spending it. Where else do you do that? Like, wipe your nose with $1? Like, I don't know. Like, how do you, like, you can put it into a bank and let it accrue interest or something, but there's not a lot of ways to use money without spending it. It sounds kind of ridiculous, but when you spend a small amount on social content, I think it's kind of a way of buying, speculating, but also using it enough to where you feel like you're adding value to the system without, buying a boat or a car with it, right?
Right. Okay.
I think that makes a lot of sense.
And historically, content platforms end up, yes, they may be paying their content creators and they're attracting an audience. And how do they monetize it traditionally? With advertising. How do you monetize this? Because it sounds like the advertising model isn't one that you want to deal with.
Yeah. So if you'll notice in Chirp, we have this feature called pinning. And so you can go right into Chirp, and on the bottom, there's a little pin. And what that does is it allows users to decide what they want everybody else to see. And the users will pay to pin. So I can create some content. Like, let's say you guys wanted to create some content for this podcast, which I'm hoping you will, and I'll definitely send you tokens so that you guys can kind of like get in there. But what you would do is you would create your content, say, hey, we have this podcast, right? And then you can pin that content, which makes it available on the right side, kind of like advertising works, but it's not controlled by businesses. It could be, but it's really like a kind of community-driven thing where people pay to make their content a little bit more visible.
Like a boosted post.
Yeah, it's a boosted post, essentially. So that's one way, but we've considered many different ways. Like, maybe we just take a clip off of a lot of the action, like,
I was going to say a little bit of the transaction.
Yeah, just take a little bit of the transaction here and there, enough to where people don't really notice, but it's still like, hey guys, like, we're building this software and spending money on it. We need to figure out how to, like, it to me, it's about sustainability. And so frankly, right now, there's nothing stopping a big company from coming in and making posts and pinning them. It could be a problem. But like, just the simple answer is that we want to take a clip off of a lot of the financial activity that's happening.
So go ahead, Brian.
Go ahead, Keith.
I was going to say at this stage, and you said, you've been running this, I think you said you're running a beta for a month or so.
Mm-hmm.
Have you, it sounds like you built this because you're passionate about it and you wanted to build this. You're looking to build a better mousetrap, and God knows we need a better mousetrap. But have you really sat down in true entrepreneurial spirit and figured out your business model and your plan and how you're really going to scale this thing? Yeah.
So frankly, no. But it's something that I've spent a lot of time on this month, like marketing, for example, because when you're building a beta, a lot of it is about product and making it stable.
Right.
Sure.
And that is very time consuming. And so I've talked with 2 people this month who've done a lot of crypto marketing, for example, and they're probably going to join here very soon. And our business model is pretty simple in the sense that we just plan to take a clip off of all of the financial transactions that happen. And I think a lot of that will come from this pinning feature, because people boosting, they're going to be willing to spend more to make their content more visible. and all of the pinning money goes to our business. And so we've already made hundreds of dollars off of that, which isn't a lot, but I mean, you have, you know, a social network, like just imagine that at scale. And we've created, actually, I think we've exceeded 10,000 financial transactions. And so if we were taking a clip from all those, I mean, you know, let's say 1 to 5% or something, you imagine that at scale, I mean, it could be a pretty decent revenue. And so that's kind of like my loose plan. But yeah, I do like, I think that, you know, one of my, maybe even a weak point as an entrepreneur is that I'm so passionate about what I build, is that for me, it's all about the empathy of the person who's using it. Because I feel like without that, you don't have a business. Like my business Popstand, for example, I realized that a lot of people were building products, like nobody's really empathizing with like what actual problems they're dealing with. And that's how I built this business. And that's how we've been able to scale it the way that we have. And it's worked very well. And that's the way that I feel like I can look at myself in the mirror every day, is if I'm actually give a fuck about the people who use the thing that I build. And that's where I always start. And like, I feel like life is short, and I'm like, I meet too many businesses that think in a very business specific way, and there's no empathy for the user. But I am, you know, I do love money too, and I'm not allergic to it. And so I, you know, it's something, and that's actually one of the reasons why I wanted to take a meeting with you guys, because I feel like you guys are getting involved in marketing, and this to me is an activity that is really related to marketing our product and really trying to discover and bring in, like, I'm a big believer in bringing in a lot of ideas. Like you can see that our Telegram channel for Chirp, it's pretty brutally honest. Like we have people like publicly just saying like, look, like this sucks or that, you know, and we fix and we ship and it hurts our feelings when we hear it sometimes, but then we learn from it and we iterate on it. And we have to do the same thing in marketing as well. Frankly.
But your passion and empathy for what you do and the reason you do it, I think makes you who you are, right? And it makes you, and it has your DNA all over the products. And a lot of entrepreneurs, probably most of them, will look at a market opportunity, right? I got an idea, there's a hole in the market and I think we can fill it, and I think we can fill it with this great product. And you have that part, but finding the way to build the right scalable business model and monetize it in a way that becomes profitable, scalable, maybe something that you just continue to scale and you grow, or it's something that that you spin off and someone buys from you. But you've been successful doing this before, and I applaud you for that. Your passion for what you do is just really, I think, what makes it very special.
I think having that user empathy is a much better driver than, you know, having it all figured out where it's going to come from a financial perspective. And I think that knowing that you have some idea of where it's going to start makes a lot of sense. So
if you give the people what they want and you give the people what they need, and there's a song there somewhere. It's a long, I got to go find that. If you give the people what they want and you give them what they need, then the money's going to come. Right.
I believe
figure out how to tweak, but you're catering right to hearts and minds and pain points.
Yeah. And there are some very specific pain points. Like we can even talk about that for a second. I mean, I don't know how much time you guys have.
Sure, go ahead.
So I can waste your guys' time for another 35 minutes if you really want to let me.
Let's go.
But so like, here's a pain point. Okay. It is really hard to market cryptocurrency related products because of all the regulation. And it's really unfair because you could be, not a security. You could just be like Chirp could have its own token, for example. We just want to let people pay each other to post content. We're not trying to, get people to invest their life savings into an ICO or anything like that, right? But yet businesses like ours are not able to really advertise very well. And there's not a lot of channels that support that. Like for example, Facebook, like we ran another business called White Rabbit. It's a really great business, man. I'm really kind of disappointed that it kind of went down the way that it did. But I started it out as like a spreadsheet of just sharing assets with people, because I saw what Ian Bellina and a lot of these other people were doing. And I thought, that's a business actually, right? And and people will pay for it. I built it in a weekend, and we had about 40 subscribers within a week paying us every week just to look at data on these assets, right? It's just information. And what we found was we wanted to grow this business. So we talked to a lot of really intelligent marketers, and they're saying, look, like, your core content is so niche about these assets that what you need is a larger funnel to pull people in, like blogs and different kind of content. So we did that. It worked. And what we found was that we started talking to a lot of these people that were building these assets, ICOs and different crypto projects. And we found they all had a problem with marketing. They couldn't spend the money that they had for marketing. And we thought, wow, that is a moneymaker for us. They all have raised all of this money. And if they're smart at managing their money, they're sitting literally on a stockpile of cash that they cannot spend in advertising. That sounds like a business to me, right? So what we wanted to do is help to spread the word about information about different projects. And we were essentially a marketing business for crypto, right? And this is something I've done a lot, and I've been exposed to a lot, like the Bad Crypto podcast. I was on that, and I've helped these guys a lot, if you know them.
Sure.
And they have I think probably a very similar business to the one that you guys are running. And you know, I learned a lot about these kind of businesses. And what I found was that really these projects are desperate about spreading the word and creating content around what they're doing. There's not really a lot of channels for them to do so, especially the newer ones. And then they have these rabidly insane fan bases that want to share about it too, like these shill groups, right?
Yeah,
right.
And so to me, I thought, why don't we capture all of this willingness of these people that are like, whenever you see these psychos, like they're just crazy for products, like those are the people that, in my opinion, you really want to serve, you know? Like they're just really diehard fans of crypto. Give them a platform where they can, because like crypto Twitter, like let's imagine the life cycle on crypto Twitter. I'm a crypto guy. I really love this asset. I jump on Twitter. Nobody gives a fuck about me, and they won't for a really long time. And trust me, I know, because I've been on Twitter for 10 years, and it's just recently that people give a fuck about what I say, right? And they barely do. So now, but you can come into a network like Chirp. You don't have to go and do all this work to finally grow an audience. Your audience is right there. Like people that literally have never posted content in their life can come in, post content, shill their crypto, talk about their project, and actually have 10 to 20 people who are going to read it and care about it. Whereas on Twitter, you didn't even, it's like, it's kind of that saying, location, 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 right? Twitter is not the location for a new content creator to come and build a following on crypto, because they're not going to know how to do it. Like I know how to do it, but most people don't. Like try to do that. Try to, within a 5-month period, get 50 people on Twitter that really care about what you're saying and that are going to click on your content. Like that is just good luck. Good luck trying to do that, right?
Yeah.
But so that's why I believe building a niche that's specific to that is like, it's more like you're building a Slack community of people.
See, I was about to say that with when you were talking about, you know, going vertical and bringing crypto in first as the vertical, and Keith earlier was talking about the problem in the fishing industry. One of the things I think that's got tremendous potential with Chirp is allowing people to have those Slack-like channels, right? But bringing in kind of these content networks that exist out there on YouTube or wherever else, but that they're not really making a living, and they're not, and they're struggling, and it's so hard to build an audience for. But if you brought a few of them together, you can start attracting the audience, because here's the thing with the crypto market, the fishing market, other markets where there's an educational component to it, where you want to learn about something, that's where an audience will say, you know what, I'm willing to jump in here because I know that this guy who fishes the way I fish is over here now, and he's going to provide me content and education, and I'm going to be able to reward him for doing that. And I don't have to sit through 10 ads to watch through the series that I wanted to watch, right? So I think that has a lot of potential, that if there are vertical channels, not just crypto for Chirp, that could have a tremendous amount of growth potential for Chirp, but also for really building more dedicated, loyal audience.
Yeah, for sure. So one of the concepts that I have is like, because we don't want to be Twitter and we don't want to be Slack. Like, I think we can do way better because we have the freedom. Like Slack, they have their hands tied. They can't do a lot. They has to go through a bureaucracy of 2 months to change a fucking color of a button or something, right?
Exactly.
And for us, like, it'll be live tomorrow, trust me. And so here's an example, like, we have these channels, right? And the way that I imagine it is that we can have a private channel where, let's say somebody, they own a cryptocurrency and they want to build a community. Like, the way I imagine it is that that person becomes an owner of a private channel. They have people who subscribe. Any action that happens, any of these financial transactions that happen, like, we'll cut those owners of those channels in so that because like really the mission, and like, I'm a really big fan of jobs to be done theory. And so one of the things about jobs to be done is like, what are people using your product for? And I think the core one thing that we can achieve with this product is empowering the content creator to make money. That's what it's about. It's about letting these content creators have multiple, endless opportunities to make money with what they're doing. But that's not really YouTube's mission, but that's our mission. My mission is to help the content creator to make money in crypto or whatever. And now that we might be going to Proton chain, we have Fiat on ramps. So like now the Fiat stuff is actually possible, and it won't be possible on any other chain because you can wrap Bitcoin and send it around with all these things that Metal does. It's insane. And so now we have all this whole financial tool set that is really compatible with what we're trying to do. And so if a content creator can't come to our place, even if they have mediocre content, if they can't come there and make money, then I failed. And that's our mission. And
that's
so
excellent.
And when you have that kind of compass, I think it makes it a little bit easier to make these decisions and kind of move quickly on them. And private channels is one of those things. So I thought, why don't we just let them run their channels? They bring their own people. They bring the content. They post the content. Anything that happens there, we just give them a cut of it.
That's great. Well, and I'm assuming they could then cross-post to the public channel if they wanted to draw more people in.
Yeah.
That's
that's kind of
maybe
what happened
once
with
they
Slack.
get to a certain level of trending that it makes it to the public channel, right? There's an incentive to create better content that attracts more people, and then you get bumped up to the main page.
Yeah, that's what happens. Like, so if you get liked 6 times, it goes to a popular stream. And we're kind of working with that right now to kind of make it better. But think about what happened with Slack. Like Slack, right now, they'll build a community, then they have to build this other tool to like monetize and capture like a paywall and stuff. And I've built those. I've built some of the most successful Slack communities ever, like Startup Study Group. I was involved in that one from day one. There's like thousands of active people. And so I know how to do this. I know how to build a successful Slack community, for example. And I don't really feel like, I think that some people that I'm working with on this project, they might be a little bit bothered by it, frankly, is that I'm thinking small. Like, I want 100 people to be crazy for this shit. And I want all those people to become whales in the crypto. I want them all to earn a lot of crypto. And I will take all of the money that we get from the chain and I will share it with all these people, like literally. And people will be like, wow, like there will be a person that will be like, I made $5,000 from posting on Chirp or something. Like, I want that to be an actual story that we can go and share with other people. Like, I want to make that happen. And I'll do whatever I can to make it happen, basically.
That's great. Yeah. I love it.
And when you
I think that's a great mission.
And when it does happen, or even the fact that that's your mission, that actually becomes your marketable platform, right?
I think it is.
That's a message that you can market without having to worry about the regulatory environment.
Yeah. Have you guys seen the leaderboard, by the way? Chirp.la/leaderboard. And you can see all of the earnings standings. Like, I feel like this. Cool. I feel like this eventually is going to be kind of like marketing and something maybe even we can continue to talk with you guys about, because, I also want to learn more about what you guys have been able to achieve too, and how that ties into, where we're going as well.
That'd be great. And we'll definitely schedule a call to do that.
I want to ask you real quickly about, so you chose to build this within links, right? And that step of having to install the wallet and then use the platform. Have you felt like have you had feedback from users that it's, if they're not used to being in that kind of a DApp world, that it's more difficult to get them on?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
It's probably like, I've thought of some solutions, and my guess is that it's not always going to be that way. It's a great place to start. And here's one reason why is because people are going to be downloading this wallet like crazy, and they already are. You know, there's tens of thousands of people that do it,
Right.
and they'll see Chirp right away, and they already have their wallet. And so it's a really good place to start, but we're never going to reach the masses if they have to download a wallet and do all this other BS. Like we kind of know that, but that's kind of like in line with starting with the niche of people. Like our niche right now are people that understand this, that we don't have to educate. They
Right.
click and they're in, but we're going to grow out of that pretty soon probably. And that will mean that we probably need a social login. And then if you really want to earn or withdraw, now you have to play with the wallet. But until then, you can get in, feel welcome, post like you do any other network, right? And that'll all happen in due time.
I have no technical knowledge of links whatsoever. I mean, my first encounter with it was for Chirp.
That's okay. It's not a technical podcast.
but I was curious. I mean, is there any feasible way just to make, we have an interest in a company that has a browser-based wallet. Is there any interest in it or possibility of it being a plugin or some kind of browser-based implementation of the Lynx wallet?
Yeah, I preach a lot about this online, and I think that that's the way it should be. I mean, think about the way fiat payments happen. I go to some site, I'm not in a wallet when I go to the site. I want to buy some shoes, and it's
Right.
like I check out with Stripe or something. It's integrated in. And that's the way that crypto is going to be. It's just right now, these are the rough days
Sure.
of the UI.
So
that's cool. It's understandable.
And speaking of the rough days, and I think he gave some great advice to maybe would-be or first-time entrepreneurs earlier on in the podcast, that you said when it just seems shitty and people are telling you you're stupid and you're struggling and you're like can't see the light. That's when you need to put your head down and dig and just power through it. And it's going to happen, but you just got to keep grinding through it.
Yeah.
What's another piece of advice? Because you are a successful entrepreneur and you've done this several times and you just keep replicating with the next thing that you're passionate about. What's a piece of advice you could pass on to a would-be entrepreneur or a first entrepreneur that's trying to carve their path, carve their spot in this space?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, like, I'm pretty hard on myself. Like, I don't really I feel like some of the greatest maybe advice that I've given myself is that, like, don't have numerical goals. I think that, like everything that you can do, like, I believe in this sort of Da Vinci. Like, I always call it making a Da Vinci. Like, when people look at Da Vinci's work, they see that he just was relentless, like literally hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of iterations. And they've like proven it now because they've dissected his work. And the guy was basically never pleased. And I think that you want to get involved in something that's exponential. You never want to hit your goal. Like, you just like, you want it to be like you can constantly grind on it. Right. And so I don't really like consider, like, for me, to me, success is really that I can control my time. Like, I love the fact that I don't need to go to an office or that nobody is my boss. Like, that to me is already enough. Like, coming from where I come from, being poor and, just where I come from, like, and, my background is not good. And just to be where I am today, very thankful for it, man. Like, it's already good enough for me. But like, I'm a grinder. Like, I'll never be happy with where I'm at. And I love that. And so if I really had to give some piece of advice, I know that one thing that's really hard on new entrepreneurs, because I see so many of those running a software business. I talk to thousands of entrepreneurs, right? One of the biggest mistakes that I see people make is that they overthink their first idea. And so they're like, foray into entrepreneurship is like, I'm going to build the next Facebook, or I'm going to build, it's very complex. And I gave this entrepreneur advice the other day. I said, don't quit your job. Do this for 2 hours at night, start with one product and just see how it goes. See how you like it. Because a lot of people like me, I was kind of stupid and I didn't really look into the stats, but I just made this really huge jump. I was just like, man, I'm quitting. And, I did save money and stuff like that, but a lot of people tend to overthink their first idea, and it's really hard. And I think that probably a lot of people get turned off from entrepreneurship by starting something that's a little too complex, and they can't pull it off. and it just ends up being a massive failure. And then they kind of, I think that they carry that with them in a lot of ways. And I think that you can kind of avoid it by, you know, it's sort of like if you're getting into boxing, like you don't just go up against Mike Tyson, like on your first try, you know what I mean? You got to start small. And the stats show that that's right. Like a lot of entrepreneurs that made it, they didn't quit their jobs, for example. It's a very common thing. And when you really look into the stats, it's another thing I would recommend is that early entrepreneurs or people that are successful and that did it, they have a great network and they have financial resources. They don't quit their job.
That's right.
So just don't be so risky in the beginning. Like try something small is okay, I think.
Well, and I think the advice that you gave that I can remember one of the first startups I built, it was definitely ahead of its time, but in my mind, I could see where all the pieces were going, right? And I wanted that first. And that was what led it to fail because it was never done. And it was never, and I really wanted all of everything to come together instead of saying, you know, nobody's ever done any of this, so they don't know what it should be. I can start with this little piece. And then if I can get to that big vision someday, that's great. But I could never let myself be satisfied with that when I was younger. I wanted it to be bigger.
Break it into pieces, I think is good, man. Like me and my partner at Popstand, we always just talk to each other about, we learn by failure. We learn by just doing things fucking wrong. And,
right.
And like we did so many things wrong. Like we were in multiple industries. We were doing medical software and, you know, and like we were working with people in other times. Like we've learned so many things about building software, and it's just, that's what a business is. In my opinion, like with the other business, like another business I built called Twinsy that's still running and still generating revenue. It's a really great business. It's an assistance.
Wait, why do I know
business.
that business?
And what I learned was that like that business was just about accumulating processes. Like you learn something and then you kind of bake that into the business, and that kind of becomes your moat. Like the thing that you know that the other guy doesn't know, that is your business. And the way that you kind of mine these insights is through kind of like making bad mistakes, you know?
Yeah, it's so true.
It's easy to say, start simple and don't quit your day job. And, you know, but every entrepreneur has to get the financial resources to grow their company. And whether that means they do it, start very simply and scale as they become sustainable, self-sustaining, or they go out and raise money, or they go for a non-traditional raise through crypto with an STO, or some other token generating event, as long as it's compliant, which is a whole different set of hurdles and a completely other podcast, which you could go back and listen to because we already did that one. But nice. You've got to have enough to keep this thing going. So you started out with Popstand, you said, and you were working with all different kinds of industries. Sometimes you've got to take it where you can get it, right? And you need the resources to keep going, and you learn from those experiences. So I'm sure that you gained a lot of knowledge and experience out of working with some of those companies, but you also learned what you didn't want to do and honed in on it. So part of the process is the process of elimination.
Yeah, it is. I mean, at first when you build these businesses, it's like, Uncle Joe's taco shop wants to be your customer. It's like you kind of have to say yes at first. You know what I mean? You kind of don't. You don't have the choice there. But now it's kind of like we're to a point to where like I really choose people that I think are compatible, and it's kind of funny because like all those principles that people tell you, like they don't make sense until you kind of learn it the hard way. So it's almost like you can tell an entrepreneur something and maybe it'll get through to them, but it's sort of like they just have to, it's like kids. I don't have kids myself, but I have 6 nieces and nephews, and I sort of just learned through it. I was like, knowledge is not really useful. Like failure is the knowledge. And it's like, you can say something and maybe it'll kind of get through to somebody. And like, cause I was told so many different things, you know, like that business has to be capitalized properly, or how are you going to afford that? Or you don't have a plan. And, you know, I had to learn it the really kind of the hard way. And, you know, and I'm trying to learn deeper knowledge. Like I almost am starting to believe that early entrepreneurs should only start a certain kind of business. Like they might need to be a little bit heavier on the consulting side, because if you go from I'm using my body to do labor to go to this 9-to-5 job, all of a sudden to building this hyper scalable SaaS business, like if you succeed at that, great. But what percent of people really will succeed at that? Like it almost might be that you need to start a consulting business as a private individual first or something, and that's safer, or start a SaaS that gives you enough money to pay a quarter of your rent and you have some other stream of revenue, right? Like I feel like, and we don't know that as entrepreneurs. And so it's kind of, but I believe that people are going to learn that that's true, that there's certain kinds of businesses you should start in the beginning. And I just don't know what those are, but I kind of learned by accident. Like my business was really a consulting business. I just wasn't an employee anymore. And then it was like, now I'm investing, or, you know what I mean? Like it kind of like evolves over time.
Sure. That's great. That's fantastic.
Well, but for you, you say you don't know what it is for, people should start with a certain kind of business and you don't really know what it is. It's going to be different for everybody, and it's going to be based around, hopefully it's based around what you're truly, truly passionate about.
It should be. I mean, that's a huge thing. I mean, like if you guys have read that book, Grit, it's one of the books that like really had a big impact on me. And because I was always wondering, like when I was in skateboarding, for example, I was like, how the hell did I even, like I was a 12-year-old kid. Like, why was I so driven to do that? I have no idea. It's like
Bart Simpson
and my nieces and nephews and my brothers and sisters, they're like, well, why don't you spend more time like telling the kids how to skateboard? And I was like, because I don't think they should, frankly. Like, I mean, it's just dangerous. And it's like now that I'm an adult, it's just like, why the, like get into video game. Like the thing that was the skateboarding of that time is like, I think gaming is the thing that, kids are getting a lot of hard times for. And it's kind of like how skateboarding was like, don't do that. And why are you leaving school to do that? Why are you staying up late to do that? Or why are you hanging out?
Kids are getting hard times for it, but most adults don't realize how much money is to be made in that industry. Yeah.
I mean, I'm surprised that you're not commentating these, because you know what? Like esports commentators are very interesting to me. I mean, like, and I think that if you got into that, there's a pretty bright future for it. Like I was trying to get my nephew into drone piloting when he was like 5 years old or whatever, right? Because I feel like that's going to be a really big thing, like just piloting drones around.
It is a big thing.
And I just now. I thought that telling them to skateboard is like, this is some primitive shit. You're going to bust your face on the concrete. Like I'm lucky that I'm not crippled. You know what I mean?
My parents wouldn't let me skateboard. My mom was like, no, I'm not letting you do something where you're going to break your leg every time you go out.
Well, maybe they're just smarter. My mom was just like, like that, just back to the passion thing, right? Like, I think that, and this is what Angela Duckworth says in Grit. She's just like, look, the two things that have to be present in order for you to get to a high level of performance, one is passion and the other is time, right? So if you don't have those two things present, do not expect success, right? And it's only those two things. It's the only thing that they've really been able to scientifically figure out that shit works is you have to love it and you got to do it a lot. And they say it's like at least 6 hours a day. So like if I'm building a podcast and I'm not doing the shit 6 hours a day, don't expect it to go anywhere. Like not fast anyways, right? Like, and that's what I know every time I take on a new endeavor. Like I got into YouTube videos for a while and it was like, man, I hate this shit. Like I would do it for an hour, like every 3 days, and I just hated it,
Well, we're going to be doing well though, because we just put 2 hours into this episode, so we only got 4 hours left.
4 hours today
to become something. Man, it's been an awesome conversation and insightful, and great to get to know you a little bit. And I am sure that we're going to continue our conversations in the coming weeks. But tell folks how they can find you if they would like to find you, or, I don't know, hire you to do some work.
Yeah, for sure. I think it would be good to check out Chirp at chirp.la. And then also on Twitter is a good way to find me. And my handle is at Kurtybot, KURTYBOT.
Kurt,
thanks, guys.
Thanks so much for spending some time with us here. And Brad, tell folks where they can find us.
Blacknox.com, CryptoBiz.services. Those are the two best places. CryptoBiz team on Twitter.
If you'd like to make a comment, please do so at CryptoBiz Podcast on Telegram, or you can send us an email to team@blacknox.com. For Brad Nickel, my name's Keith Allen, and Kurt Braget. Thanks for joining us here on CryptoBiz, the Crypto Business Podcast.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
That's cut.